Hey everyone, it's Patch 3.22 Ancestor, and today I want to talk about a farming strategy that I've actually really been enjoying doing the past few days of the season. It's actually been surprising me just how effective it's been at generating currency. Today we're going to be talking about running Shaper invitations and boss rushing. This is a strategy that's existed for quite a while now. It's nothing new, and if anything, it's actually only gotten weaker over the past few patches with removal of really important points on the tree, such as all bosses released at once or Elegant Hubris. But this season, it actually is making quite a lot of profit, and I'm actually quite surprised by just how good it is and the fact that it kind of competes for one of the highest money makers per hour possible in the game right now. Now, before we go any further, I do want to mention that this strategy that we're going to be talking about is going to require a mid to end game build, as the majority of what we'll be doing today is nothing but bossing. We will be simply just rushing through bosses as fast as we can, and we aren't going to be spending any sort of time in maps. Your clear doesn't really matter for this. All that really matters is how tanky you are and how much single target DPS you have. With that said, don't be afraid to try this strategy with a weaker build. You can still make quite a lot of money with it. It's just the better you build, the stronger you are, the harder you can make the bosses, which overall just means you get more currency. So it's actually a strategy that you could potentially scale up as you do it more and more to increase your money per hour as you upgrade your build while doing the mechanic. So why don't we get into the tree and talk about the strategy? So our tree is going to be very simple. We don't want to waste any time in our maps. That means no doing any random harvest or any random expedition or blight or whatever. We simply want to open the map. We only want to do things that make us get to the boss faster. And then we want to kill the boss. Because of that, the only things we're going to be really picking up this tree are simply going to be shrines, because shrines make us faster. We're picking up Heist because Heist is just free money for the amount of time it takes to actually do it. And then we'll be adding in Niko tech because Niko tech just gives us an additional 45% movement speed, meaning we can get to the boss a lot faster. So our tree is actually pretty forgiving. As you can see, we don't really need to pick up all of our passive points because most of the points that we're picking up are just simply all of the map duplication chance, though it's all over the tree. So if you end up having 10 or 20 less points, you simply can just drop a bunch of the duplication nodes wherever you can, and that will give you some of your points back. But obviously we do want to be as close as we can to having our 4 points, as every single one of these duplication nodes will actually make quite a big difference. So if we want to start at the bottom of the tree, all we're going to be doing is picking up the Shrine node and the Heist node. Shrines are just amazing for any build. Even if your build can potentially get screwed over by having too much attack speed, they simply just make you so fast that they're worth it. They also make you quite tanky, as quite often you'll get either the regen node or the armor, evasion, and energy shield increase shrine. And because of those two, you should have no problem dealing with these bosses if you are playing a weaker build. Otherwise, we're going to be picking up Secret Stash for more Smuggler's Caches, and then we'll be pathing over to the left. On the left, we have Dutiful Soldier, which is amazing. This gives us Huck as an ally in our maps. And the reason we want Huck is because we can give him gear, and we can give him a piece of gear with a level 14 haste on it, which means that we get a free haste aura, which we wouldn't have to otherwise run in our build, making us be able to immediately run faster to the end of the boss as soon as we click the first cache. Otherwise, we're simply just going to be pathing over to the left because we want to pick up every single gateway. The reason we want these gateways is because we want to be running 7th gate. If you don't know what 7th gate does, is if you have all 6 gateways allocated, it will allow you to pick every single option from the map device, even the ones that are not available this season. So for our purposes, we want to be putting Heist on every single one of our maps, but Heist is not available this season. So that is why we're picking up 7th gate to be able to put that on every single map. Other than that, we're going to simply be going over to the left to pick up Finer Arts, which is going to give us more deception contracts, which are the contracts actually worth something. We're going to be picking up both No Honor Among Thieves and Chasing the Joint, as both of these can give us quite a lot of extra money, especially Chasing the Joint. When this procs, you have a 1% chance per cache that you click to just immediately basically give you around half a div for a fully revealed blueprint. To go along with that, we are picking up all the shrine nodes. These are simply just to make our shrines last longer and to have a higher chance of seeing shrines. And then for synchronism, we get 2 shrine effects every time we click it, meaning we'll more often see the movement speed shrine and the tank shrines, which will make everything a little bit easier. And then the final thing that actually is going to matter for all of our farming is going to be the nodes at the top. Since we're not really killing anything in these maps and we're just rushing the bosses, we want to pick up the 3 nodes that give us increased chance for maps. This is Vivid Memories for Synthesis maps, Remnants of the Past for Shaper and Elder maps, and Conquered Conquerors for additional Conquer maps. We also want to come over to the middle for the Maven wheel and pick up Destructive Play. Now, Destructive Play is a new keystone that was added in 3.22 that makes it so every time we fight a boss that is witnessed by Maven, which we'll be always witnessing, she will summon 1 to 3 random bosses from anywhere within the Atlas. Now, these bosses are going to be pretty simple to kill. And the reason we care about this is because each of those bosses actually count as map bosses. So that means the bosses will have the chances from all the map drop chance that we pick up to also drop a map themselves. So actually fairly often, you will end up seeing multiple Shaper and multiple Elder maps from every single one of the maps that you're running because these are proccing. Sometimes you'll see a few Conquer maps, sometimes you see a few Synthesis maps. And with the rest of the points, because we're putting all of them into map duplication chance, we have a 17% chance that if one of these 3 nodes procs, that we get an additional map. And this applies for every single boss that Maven summons, making this actually generate us quite a lot of very valuable maps. Next up, I want to move on to the setup and how we're going to be doing all this. So the first thing to mention is we are going to be doing Shaper maps. Now, getting these in bulk is a little bit hard off a trade. So what I would instead recommend is to go over to the TFT Discord and use the bulk maps want to sell channel and find yourself someone on here who is selling Shaper maps. These are going to change in price and go up and down, but realistically, any price works. Currently, the price is about 60 to 65 chaos per set. And honestly, any price point around this should be fine. Even if they go to 70, 75 chaos per, that's still fine. And you should just buy your maps and just immediately start farming rather than worrying too much about the price. As at that price point, you'll be making quite a lot of money. The other thing you're going to need for this are going to be invitations for the Formed. The goal of the strategy is to run one of each maps. So we're going to be running a Chimera, a Hydra, a Phoenix, and a Minotaur, and all of them are going to be ran with Maven Witnessing. And then afterwards, we'll be able to do a Formed invitation, which is going to give us quite a lot of money. For the maps themselves, you don't actually need to do anything to them. If anything, I would recommend you scour every single map. The quality on the map and any of the quality that you might get from alking the map does not apply to the chance of the big map drops at the end to happen. So we just want to run them white just to make the bosses as easy as possible. Alking the maps quite literally just makes your time in these maps harder rather than giving you extra money. It actually quite literally just makes you lose money per hour. Now, as for the invitations, we actually do want to roll these to a very specific amount. We want to roll every single one of them to at least 70% quantity. Now, this is a very important number because if you take a 70% quantity invitation and vol it, this will guarantee that you get 5 Maven splinters every single kill. Now, if it goes unidentified like this, that's even better because that's extra quantity, which means you'll always get 6, assuming this was 70%. Now, one thing that might happen is when you roll these, they might vol to a lower percentage. And if that happens, that's completely fine. It doesn't matter. And then the other potential thing that could happen is this right here to where it vols into 8 mod maps. Now, these are going to be very difficult to actually do. But if you can complete these, you'll be getting somewhere around 7 to 8 splinters every time, making these really, really good to do. This is the part of this whole strategy where your build is going to matter. The stronger your build, the harder you're going to be able to make these invitations overall, meaning the more money you make. But obviously, if you run a weaker build, you're not going to be able to do this. What I'd recommend is for basically everyone to just roll these to 70% and then just vol them and just leave them at that. If you are a little bit of a weaker build, it's okay to roll these down to maybe around 40 to 50% quantity. Play around with it and see what is comfortable for you. But even if you have a weaker build, you do not want to run these white. Always at least alk them and roll them for something. No matter how little it is, it will help because it will overall give you more Maven fragment pieces, which are the big moneymaker here. As for the rest of the setup, there's actually something we could do to add in a little bit of extra profit. So we are going to be running some compasses. Now, the 2 that we're going to want for this are going to be the additional Conquer map when completing a map and the Smuggler's Cache one. The Smuggler's Cache one is a no-brainer because we're already running Heist, and the more Smuggler's Caches we put on our tree, the better, especially because we have no honor among thieves, which makes it so we get 10% more rogue markers for every single cache we open. These rogue markers are going to be making us quite a lot of money. So adding in additional Smuggler's Caches overall increases the profit of all of our heisting even further. As for the Conqueror map on completing your map, the reason we want to add this in is because you'll benefit from all the duplication chance. Now, with current prices, you are making somewhere around 5 chaos if you are taking all the Conquer maps that you're getting and selling them in bulk. Even at 5 chaos, that is really good, especially since you are doing somewhere around 20 to 30 of these maps per hour, which means adding in the Conquer map compass gives you around half a div of extra currency per hour. One really nice thing you could do with these is you can take them, hold shift, and you can mass apply them to your void zones, which means if I have 2 Conquer Sextants here, I could put both of them at the same time. And that means I don't have to worry about this for 8 maps. It will only consume 1 charge every time I do a map. And because we have both Smugglers and Conquer for this, we can put 2 on each void zone. And this means for every 2 sets of invitations that we run, we get to completely ignore having to put more compasses, and we don't have to reapply these every single set. The last thing to mention is going to be what we do with the map device. Obviously, you are going to be running Maven Witness for everything. If you are not, then this whole strategy kind of falls apart. The other thing that you need to do is to go down and pick Heist, which will be available with the 7th gate option. The last thing we want to also add on top of all this is going to be a Rusted Sulfite Scarab. The reason we want to add this in is because of Niko tech. As I mentioned previously, we are picking up Packed with Energy. What this means is every time we click the Sulfite node inside of the maps, we're going to be getting 1% max res, 35% increased damage, and 15% movement speed. And these bonuses stack for each Sulfite vein. So by the time you get to the boss, you'll have 3% max res, additional 115% increased damage, and 45% increased movement speed. And what we could do is we could also pick up mining byproducts, which means every time we gain Sulfite, we have a 10% chance to also gain Azerite. Now, this really doesn't proc that often, but it still adds somewhere around an additional chaos per map worth of value you do. So it's something to pick up, especially since we're doing Niko tech. Realistically, this is a very small part of this, and you do not have to interact with anything delve related. Just simply think of this Rusted Sulfite Scarab as extra movement speed. That's all it really is. But you don't have to add this on here, and you don't have to have any of the Niko tech if you don't really want it. Now let's talk about running these maps. Well, they're going to be very simple. As I mentioned, we just want to rush the boss. You're going to open up your map. You're going to just bum rush through everything. And you're simply just going to be clicking on the Sulfite veins if you are doing Niko tech. And you're going to be clicking on all the shrines for additional movement speed. And finally, all of the rogue caches to get any blueprints and to get any of the markers and any of the contracts inside of them. One thing to mention about all this is you actually might want to potentially go do 1 blueprint in Heist. The reason for that being that if you do a rogue trinket one, and you can get your friend to carry you through this if you don't have your rogues leveled up enough to be able to do a Thieves Trinket Grand Heist. And as soon as you do 1, you'll be able to get yourself the rogue trinkets unlocked. And the reason we want this is because we can get a rogue trinket that has smugglers' caches have a 10% chance to duplicate rogue markers. Rogue markers from this are about maybe 1 to 2 div an hour. So if we get 10% more markers, that means we're making anywhere between 0.1 to 0.2 div an hour extra just passively. It does take a little bit of effort to go and get this, but I highly recommend it, especially if you're going to do quite a lot of these maps, as 0.1 to 0.2 div per hour does add up over quite a few hours. But other than that, we're simply just going to be running through, clicking everything, and just rushing to the boss. You can kill monsters if you want to, but that's just going to slow you down. If you can ideally just run past everything to the boss as fast as you can, that is going to be a little bit better, as the total amount of invitations per hour is going to determine how much money you make per hour. The boss themselves are going to be pretty easy, especially if you do Niko tech, since you have so much damage, meaning weaker builds are going to have an easy time. And as soon as you kill them, you just simply portal out. You just do the next map in the rotation of your current shaper set. And as soon as you finish all that, you are going to do the invitation itself. Now, the invitation is the part that's going to be a little bit tough here. As I mentioned, we are rolling these maps to at least 70% quantity. And that means the mods on these are going to be a little bit difficult for some builds to handle. For the invitation itself, you're going to be fighting 2 of the 4 bosses at once. And as soon as you kill one, or after a few seconds have passed, the Maven will bring another one of the bosses into the fight itself, meaning you are timed to kill them quickly if you can, to not get overwhelmed if you're running a weaker build, or if you're running a super strong build, you just one-shot all of them and collect your loot. Next up, I want to talk about the loot that you're going to be getting from this. So the loot is going to be overall very easy to deal with. The majority of your money is going to come from the Maven Writs, and it's going to come from the Shaper sets. Now, both of these are fairly easy to sell. The Maven Writs, you can just simply put them up for sale from your stash tab and just sell them in bulk to people. If you sell them on TFT, you can typically get around maybe 0.1 div extra per writ, especially if you have a really big bulk of 30, 40, 50 or more writs. You'll definitely be able to get 0.1 extra div per, which is quite a lot of extra profit. Because you are doing the Maven invitation as well, you are going to get a few extra pieces every time. And when you add those on to the guaranteed ones that you get for each map you do, you on average break even just with these. The other loots that you're going to be getting from this are going to be random Elder maps, random Shaper maps, and random Conqueror maps, especially if you are doing the Conqueror Sextant, then you're going to be having quite a lot of Conqueror maps. What you can do with these is really up to you. You can either try to bulk sell them on TFT, which will actually get you quite a lot of extra money per. Currently, Conqueror maps are somewhere around 30 chaos or so. But if you sell them in sets on TFT, you can get somewhere around 45 to 47 chaos per set. At which point, the Conqueror Sextant is making you somewhere around a div to 2 div extra profit per hour. And at that point, it really, really is worth it to not just randomly sell them individually on trade. For the extra Shaper maps that you do end up getting, you honestly can just keep them for yourself and just simply use them as a way to reimburse yourself for some of the upfront costs. You aren't going to fully sustain the maps, but I would say from my personal experience, you get somewhere around 50% or so of the maps back, which makes running this actually even easier. Because it means that if you buy yourself 20, 30 sets, you effectively just buy yourself somewhere around 40 to 50 sets instead, as you'll be getting quite a lot of them back, meaning you don't have to go back and buy more supplies that often. Lastly, for the Elder maps, I would just do the same thing here. I would just immediately go sell them to people. Or if you really want, which I don't recommend because Elder sets are not fun to do, you can do exactly what you're doing in the strategy where we're running Shaper sets with the Elder sets. You would instead be doing the Elder invitation and be running one of each of the Elder maps. And you could bounce between Elder and Shaper maps like that for quite a while before you actually fully run out of supplies. Other than that, there are going to be quite a lot of other small things you might get here and there. You might get a random Cortex, you might get a random Synthesis map, you might get a random Awaken gem here and there from when you kill any of the bosses that Maven's witnessed, or from when you do the invitation itself, and you might just get a random base here or two. But overall, the majority of your profits and the majority of the things they have to sell are simply just any of the map sets that you don't want to do, the Shaper sets themselves, and the Maven Writs, making this really, really easy to handle. The final thing to mention in terms of the loot that you'll be getting from this is all the heist contracts. Now, the heist contracts are going to be very simple to sell. All you're going to do is you're just simply going to take everything out of your heist locker, and you could very easily dump things in here while you're doing the strategy by just simply setting the affinity. And then you're just going to take all of these things and just dump them into a quad tab. It doesn't matter where this quad tab is as long as it's public. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come over to PoE Stack and you're going to go over to the TFT bulk tool. The TFT bulk tool actually makes it really, really simple to sell all these contracts to people who want to buy them. You have to go through the setup to set up PoE Stack if it's your first time using it. But once it is set up, all you have to do is just simply refresh your tabs so it knows what tabs you currently have. Select the 2 tabs where you have all of your blueprints and all of your contracts in it. Load the tabs so it goes through and quickly parses everything you have in there. And then all you have to simply do is just move the slider and then click the post to TFT button, and everything inside of those will be posted to TFT. You'll get a little notification. And then for anyone who wants to buy any of your contracts, they can simply just message you off of here, tell you what they want. For example, let's say someone messages me for the trap disarmament ones. And then all I have to do is just simply come to my tab, type in trap, and then just take every single thing that actually shows up and just hand it to them. This tool alone is what makes actually doing heists not a complete pain in the ass, as otherwise trying to sell these contracts, trying to keep track of how many of what you have, and just doing all the logistics of heists just really doesn't make it very viable. Now, one thing to mention about this is most of these will actually not sell unless you give people a massive discount. I would try to go for maybe a 70 to 60% discount on everything that isn't the high-end blueprints, as most of the unusual gems and replica blueprints will instantly sell at 110% value, and the deception contracts. Those two are realistically where you're going to be selling. And most of these other contracts are typically going to probably be junk unless you sell it for super, super cheap. But your deception contracts and your high-end blueprints, you should always be able to sell those for 110%, if not even slightly over 110%. You're going to have to look at the prices of a given day and price them around that. But those will always immediately sell at maximum value, which is fine because those are typically around 70 to 80% of the total value of anything heist related anyway. One other thing I want to mention is it really depends on luck. And personally, I haven't actually done enough of these sets to tell you if this is accurate or not. But from the 50, 60 sets I've done over the past few days, I seem to sometimes over-sustain my formed invitations. It's not always the case, and sometimes I do have to buy more formed invitation. But it did seem after somewhere around 40 to 50 total invitations, I had somewhere around 7 to 8 extra invitations lying around. And it could just be pure luck, but it could also be something that over a really big sample size, you do end up getting more and more invitations than you need, meaning you could sell a few of them off for extra profit. I want to say this is true because each boss you kill has a 25% chance to actually give you an invitation. And we're picking up these small maven nodes at the top of the tree, which increase the chance for the bosses to drop an invitation. So I think your actual chance for an invitation is somewhere around 30%, meaning 5% of the time you are walking out with an additional invitation. Now, mind you, because this might be a little bit volatile, you could also have bad luck and not get enough invitations, meaning you're going to have to go out and buy some from other people every once in a while. But if this is true and you are actually solely gaining invitations, once you do maybe 30, 40 sets of these, you can also factor in the invitations into your profit per hour. That's all I really have to say for the strategy. I am actually super fond of the strategy. To me, it kind of gets boring after a few days, unfortunately, just because it's a little bit monotonous. But I actually have had quite a lot of fun doing this for the past 2-3 days or so and making quite a lot of money with it. If you go and decide to do the strategy yourself, I hope you have fun with it. It's honestly something I really like doing at least for a few days every season here and there. And it's a really good time, especially if you've never done it before, because it's just such a really strong farming method. As everything that you're farming is just worth so much money that you're just doing a lot of big trades. And in my opinion, those feel really, really good to do. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, or feel free to come by my Twitch. I stream every single day and ask any questions there. I'll be more than happy to help you whenever. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope to see you cuties in the next one. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.